The Browns built the ultimate line for Shedeur Sanders, but can survive the AFC North. One snap will tell us everything.
I mean, I think the pitch for me was clear. I mean, looking at the team from outside in, for me, it looked like a team on the rise. Like, there's a lot of pieces. The front office is very, hell-bent on improving the offensive line, improving the team as a whole. And, my role was just to come in.
Titus Howard says, being in a city with such a love for football and just excited to get here and make an impact, especially on the offensive line, to give Shedeur, Deshaun, and all these quarterbacks as much time as possible. Now, free agency for the most part is basically over, and the Browns did some interesting things, right? I think if you're a Browns fan, you got to be pretty happy about this situation, right? I was talking about that, and I am recording this live with my beautiful audience here, and they, as we were talking about it, we say, hey, man,
the reason they have to make these signings is because the guy that you're paying to be in charge of signing or picking college talent to be able to replace these guys, so they come a little cheaper, so you can put assets towards veterans that you have or veterans that you want to bring in for other positions or anything else. You haven't been able to do that. This is a cause and effect here, and I really hope it works out. I really do, but the victory lap that I'm getting, I had no doubt that Andrew Berry was going to go get some offensive linemen. He had to.
Yeah, they had to fill it out.
The NFL is in complete shock. The Cleveland Browns just built the most dominant offensive line in NFL history around Shedeur Sanders. Zion Johnson walked into that press conference and said it with his chest. The front office is hellbent. The pieces are elite and the potential is limitless. Titus Howard, Elton Jenkins, Kevin Jenkins, Zion Johnson, all in one room. All built around one quarterback. Every team in the league just realized they are in serious trouble. And Shedeur Sanders hasn't even taken his first real snap behind this unit yet. All right, let's get into every piece of this because what just happened in Cleveland is not a normal offseason roster move. This is not a team patching holes. This is not a front office throwing bodies at a problem and hoping something works. What Andrew Berry just assembled around Shedeur Sanders is a deliberately constructed, specifically engineered elite-level offensive line that was built with one purpose and one purpose only: to give a pocket passer with franchise quarterback tools the cleanest, most protected environment any young signal caller has operated in since Patrick Mahomes was coming up in Kansas City. And the men they brought in to build, it just told the world exactly what they think about what they are creating together. Zion Johnson sat down in front of the Cleveland media and did not hedge a single word. When they asked him about the sales pitch, what did Andrew Berry say to convince you to come to Cleveland? His answer was immediate, and it was direct. He said, the front office is hellbent on improving their offensive line. Hellbent. That is not the language of an organization going through the motions. That is not the language of a franchise doing the minimum necessary to fill roster spots. Hellbent means committed at a level that does not accept failure as an outcome. Hellbent means you look at what the problem was, the offensive line that left Shedeur Sanders running for his life all last season, and you decide that problem is getting solved completely. Not partially, not eventually, but right now with every resource available. And then Zion Johnson said something that should give every Shedeur Sanders supporter chills. He said he was watching Browns games from the outside last season, and he saw a young running back make a play, what appeared to be a 60-yard counter run that got called back on a holding penalty. And his reaction watching that play was immediate. He thought, if I had the opportunity to block for somebody like that, the sky is the limit. Think about that for a second. A Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman evaluating his free agent options across the entire NFL watched a Cleveland Browns game and saw enough talent on that roster to make his decision. The talent was already there. The pieces were already in place. What was missing was the protection. And now the protection is arriving in force. But here is what makes Zion Johnson addition specifically so significant for Shedeur Sanders beyond just the blocking ability. Zion Johnson is a student of the game at the deepest level.
Yeah, I mean, both of those
when
guys
they
have
asked him
watched
about the
a lot
other
on
offensive
crossover,
line
as
additions,
offensive linemen, we love to
Titus
watch our
Howard
peers,
and Elton Jenkins,
see things that they do
his
well,
answer was
see things that we
not
can steal
vague
for our own
praise.
game. And
He talked about watching them on film, about
really good
studying their
players.
game,
Titus,
about identifying
when he was with
specific
Houston,
things they
Elton,
do
when
well
was in
that
Green
he
Bay,
wants to incorporate into his own play.
those guys,
He said both
just
of those
consistent.
guys are really, really good players, and that Hayes excited to see what they can become as a unit because they all have unique strengths that can enhance each other. That is not locker room filler content. That is a professional who has done his homework and arrived at Cleveland with genuine conviction that this group is going to be special. And when you stack up what this unit actually looks like on paper right now, the combination of verified protection metrics, positional versatility, durability, and experience, the picture it paints for Shedeur Sanders Year 2 is extraordinary. Hold on, because this is where the story gets really good. Zion Johnson was asked directly about the reports out of Los Angeles that he struggled in pass protection during his time with the Chargers, and his response told you everything you need to know about the mentality that is walking into Cleveland to protect Shedeur Sanders. Headed not deflect. He did not make excuses about the Chargers' offensive line situation, which, by the way, dealt with constant injuries and personnel changes that would have affected any lineman's performance metrics. He looked directly at the question and said, "Watching the tape, I have a lot of strengths in pass protection, and it is something I have continuously worked on and improved year in and year out." That is the answer of a player who is self-aware enough to acknowledge room for growth while being confident enough in his work to push back on a narrative that does not fully reflect reality. Sound familiar? A talented player who gets hit with negative anonymous source narratives about his preparation and abilities responds not with anger or deflection, but with quiet confidence grounded in what the actual evidence shows. That is the same energy Shedeur Sanders has been bringing to Cleveland since the moment she arrived. And now he has an offensive lineman with the exact same mentality standing in front of him. The culture this offensive line is building around Shedeur is not just about blocking ability. It is about the collective character of the men doing the blocking, and that character, self-aware, hardworking, focused on the controllables, unbothered by the noise, is a perfect match for the quarterback they are being assembled to protect. Now, let's talk about the coaching side of this equation, because Zion Johnson addressed it, and it matters enormously for what this line is going to look like when training camp opens. He said that Coach Warhop was a huge draw for him in the decision to come to Cleveland. He called Warhop one of the elite offensive line coaches in the league. Said it's pretty well known, and that having the opportunity to learn from him, while also being able to bounce ideas off him, going to be great for him and great for the room as a whole. That last part, bouncing ideas off the coach, is the detail that separates elite linemen from good ones. When your players are engaged enough in the craft to have two-way conversations with the coaching staff about technique and scheme, you're not just building a functional unit, you are building a thinking unit, a unit that solves problems in real time, a unit that adjusts mid-aim when defenses make changes. That is the kind of protection that gives a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, whose entire value proposition is built on processing and decision and maximum possible time to operate.
Line looks like right now, Zion Johnson as a guard, Tevin Jenkins re-signed guard. You got Elton Jenkins, who's a free agent, who's a center. Titus Howard's going to play potentially right tackle. Again, he can also play guard, but as it stands right here, these are a bunch of guards. There's 3 guards to tackle. So Titus Howard's going to have to play right tackle, and he played most of his snaps at right tackle for Houston. Left tackle, probably going to go Monroe Phantom. We're going to talk about that in a little bit in just a second, but it does, and when I get to my eventual grade.
And then came the moment that every Shedeur Sanders supporter needed to hear directly from one of the men who is going to be responsible for keeping him upright every Sunday. The reporter asked Zion Johnson about the quarterback situation, about the fact that the competition between Shedeur and Deshaun Watson is still technically ongoing, and that the line might have to adapt to different quarterbacks at different points. And Johnson's answer was so clean, so professional, so perfectly aligned with what Shedeur needs from the 10 minutes, 8 seconds people around him that it deserves to be played on repeat. He said, "Our job is whoever is under center to give them the opportunity, the best chance to be successful at what they do. Whether that means protection or making the run game efficient to provide cushion for the quarterback, we're going to do whatever we can to help put the quarterback in a position where he can be successful." That is not a political answer. That is not a guy navigating a media question carefully to avoid controversy. That is a professional stating the job description of an elite offensive lineman with zero ambiguity. And when you combine that commitment with everything else Zion Johnson said in that press conference, the hellbent front office, the elite teammates, the elite coach, the personal conviction that this group has the potential to be something very special, what you are getting is a man who showed up to Cleveland understanding exactly what the mission is and fully committed to executing it. Now, let's zoom out and look at the full picture of what Cleveland has assembled. Because way you put all the pieces together, The scale of what they have done in this single offseason is genuinely unprecedented for a franchise that had 0 starting caliber offensive linemen developed through the draft in 6 years under the previous regime. Titus Howard, one of only 6 tackles in the entire NFL to allow 0 sacks across the regular season and postseason last year. Over 1,000 snaps, positional versatility across right tackle, left guard, and right guard. PF grade of 77, a significant improvement from the previous year, demonstrating the kind of upward trajectory you want from a player entering a key contract period. Elgton Jenkins, 7 NFL seasons, 9 total sacks allowed in his entire career. 9 All-Pro caliber performance in Green Bay before a move to center, out of necessity. Starting center money on A2, year deal that tells you the Cleveland medical staff signed off on his recovery from the fractured leg that ended his previous season. Kevin Jenkins. 0 sacks allowed across 324 offensive snaps last season, according to Pro Football Focus. 14 pressures in 17 games, 2 quarterback hits, a player that the organization considers someone they helped develop into a starting caliber piece, which means the familiarity and the communication and the scheme understanding are already there. Zion Johnson, first-round pedigree, 26 years old, 2 missed games across his entire career. Pass protection skills he has continuously improved year over year. The versatility to play left guard, right guard, and center. The mentality of a player who controls the controllables and does not let outside noise affect his preparation or his performance. My eventual grade, and potentially Joel Bitonio still in the picture. The 7-time Pro Bowler whose retirement decision is still. The player that Zion Johnson himself called the pinnacle of what young guards aspire to play like year after year. If Bitonio comes back, this line does not just become elite. It becomes historically significant. Johnson was asked directly whether filling the left guard spot that Bitonio has occupied at a Pro Bowl level for years would be daunting if Bitonio retires, and his answer was everything. He said he has a lot of faith in himself and his own abilities to help this team win. Height is an honor to play that position after somebody like Ponio. And then he said, and this is the line, will be my job to hold that standard in my time as well. Hold that standard, not try to approximate it, not do the best can given the circumstances. Hold that standard. The standard of a 7-time Pro Bowler from a player the Browns believe in enough to sign to a multi-year deal in the prime of his career. That confidence, grounded, earned, specific, is exactly the energy this offensive line needs to carry into 2026. Every analyst who spent last season questioning Shedeur Sanders' ability to read coverages, process defenses, and perform at an NFL level now has to do their evaluation in a completely different context. Because the context last season was chaos, rotating linemen without injury justification, inadequate personnel, a protection scheme that could not hold up long enough to let a pocket passer operate within the structure of the offense. Everything negative that was said about Shedeur's performance last year, every anonymous source claim, every stat line used as evidence against him, every take about his long-term viability as a franchise quarterback was generated within that context. Now change the context. Give him Titus Howard on the right side. Give him Elgton Jenkins at center. Give him Zion Johnson and Kevin Jenkins at guard. Put all of them under one of the most respected offensive line coaches in the NFL. Let them spend an entire offseason, an entire training camp, an entire preseason building the synergy and the communication and the shared understanding of how they fit together as a unit. And then watch what happens when Shedeur Sanders stands behind that line in a real game. The version of Shedeur Sanders that the NFL has not yet fully seen, the one who processes at elite speed, delivers on time to all 3 levels of the field, manages to game with the kind of quiet efficiency that pocket passers with his football intelligence are capable of when they are not scrambling away from defensive linemen on every third play. That version is coming, and the Cleveland Browns just made sure the conditions for him to show it have never been better. Zion Johnson said the team has the potential to be something very special. He said it looking at a roster that already has Quinshon Judkins making 60-yard runs that get called back, that already has the offensive infrastructure of a team that is building towards something real. He said it knowing he has Titus Howard and Elgton Jenkins as teammates and Coach Warhop as his position coach. He said it is a player who has never missed more than 2 games in a season and who brings the durability and consistency that a young quarterback needs from the men protecting him. The NFL did not see this coming. The same franchise that had 0 starting caliber offensive linemen developed through the draft in 6 years under the previous regime just went out and signed and traded for one of the most versatile, most experienced, most protection-focused offensive line groups assembled around a young quarterback in recent memory in one offseason with intention, with a plan, with the specific goal of giving Shedeur Sanders everything he was denied last season. The doubters are running out of arguments. The anonymous sources are running out of angles. And Shedeur Sanders is heading into year 2 with the most dominant offensive line the Cleveland Browns have assembled in a generation standing in front of him. Is the Cleveland Browns' offensive line rebuild the most significant single offseason transformation of a quarterback support system in recent NFL history? And does the combination of Titus Howard, Elton Jenkins, Kevin Jenkins, Zion Johnson, and potentially Joel Bitonio mean that the league is about to see the real Shedeur Sanders for the first time? Drop everything you're thinking in the comments. I need every single take. And if you want every update as this story keeps developing, every signing, every training camp report, every moment this offensive line takes shape around Shedeur Sanders, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe and stay locked.
Is not a great pass blocker. That's just not what, you know what I mean? That's not what he gets paid to do. Right? Well, that is what he gets paid to do. He's not good at it, though, right? Tevin Jenkins, while pass blocking, it's not like he's elite, right? 17th is the top half of guards, right? But, this is not like a top 5, top whatever, XYZ. But at the end of the day, hey, mid is okay when you have nothing. But when you look at the run block win rate,